I want to talk about today about the power of positive feedback, which actually you reminds me about it, how strong and how powerful it is. It is. I call it dynamite field of love. So it's like it's really doing something as a giver and also as a receiver.
Mm.
Something really, really strong. And what I found crucial in it that when you focus on the things that are actually somewhere, then you
Mm.
don't you are really here and now. This is the
Yeah.
moment. This is the for me the great instrument, the great tool to really keeps you here and now and to really see what it is, because there is always like things which are you don't have. It's like in life,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
always more things that you cannot have than you have. So this is always
Yes.
the
Yeah.
truth that
Yeah.
you made.
No, yeah, I think that's completely right, and that really gets to something very important in it because it's often misunderstood. But it would be wrong if I didn't mention my teacher, Al Wanda,
Mm-hmm.
who gave this to me, gave this to all his students as his kind of basic process. And he already had done some kind of Gestalt work before that, and I think he kind of derived this from Gestalt work, but I'm not 100% sure. But he very much is the kind of, in my experience, the kind of pioneer of this positive feedback in improvisation. But of course, it was not the first time I came across it. I'd already there's a thing called unconditional positive regard, which comes from humanistic psychology, and which is kind of a kind of equivalent in a way. It's not exactly the same. And of course, my parents they would often take me aside once a year, and so I was one of three boys, and they would say, you know, you're my favorite. And they were doing that to all of us. Just not all the time, just every now and then they would say, you're my favorite. You have a special treat today because you're the best one. Every now and then. So I kind of grew up with a version of it. I mean, certainly they told us the opposite when we did something bad, you know, you're very naughty, all of that. So it wasn't like the only thing they did, but it felt familiar when I first met it. But this thing you're talking about, I think this is one of the keys, is by talking about what you enjoy, then you're talking about what actually happened. So it puts you into this descriptive place rather than you having to have an opinion
Mm-hmm.
about things or uh, it can become quite analytical, but it doesn't have to. The basis of the conversation is what actually happened, and I think that's really a crucial thing. And so often when you perform afterwards, people want to tell you about all the things you didn't do, or all the things you could have done, or how it could have been better. And I just think that this is very bad timing just after you've performed when you're actually your most vulnerable. And it's much better if the conversation is actually about what you did, what occurred. And this, an access point for that is what did I enjoy, you know, because then you have to talk about something you really did. And it doesn't mean there's no room at all for other kinds of conversation, but I think this one is actually extremely relevant to improvisation in particular and extremely relevant to conversations just after you've performed. It's really important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the moment right after performance when you are very vulnerable. Like, I mean, that
Yeah.
you are really like so, like you are naked and someone like doing something
Yeah, yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah. And you know, often they have the best intention. These people, they don't think
Yeah.
they're being cruel, but it's. I just think it's a very bad time to expect the conversation to have that kind of quality.
Mm.
Um, and the other misunderstanding people have is they think it means that everything is wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't mean everything is wonderful. I just choose to talk about the things I enjoyed.
Mm.
So by definition, maybe the things I don't talk about were terrible. That doesn't matter. You know,
Mm.
I come away with something positive and affirming something you know, that I would like to hold on to as a skill, if you like. If I did something and I enjoyed it, or I see something and I enjoyed seeing you do it, then I'm reinforcing something which means, you know, basically it's more likely to be repeated because it gets reinforced. And therefore you begin to develop a little palette of things that you enjoy, you know. But, you know, I often say now my biggest pleasure is when solo is difficult.
Hmm.
Like I really love it when I've got to struggle with it. It doesn't just mean people often say, well, that's just too easy if you talk about what you enjoy. But you go, well, we have to think about the different kinds of pleasure. So um, just doing things for fun, that's a particular kind of pleasure, and most adults need to be reminded about that one because
Hmm.
they have forgotten it in their, serious, grown-up, mature lives. So it's not a bad thing at all, but it's simply not the only pleasure. You're there to have, I say artistic pleasures. So discovering something difficult in the middle of a piece, it doesn't make it easy, but it is for me one of the most exciting things when I discover something that's quite difficult.
And this is you touch very important to me point that it doesn't mean the positive feedback. It doesn't mean that you always say that everything is great, because the in construction is like that facts what happens and your relation to it or your emotional. So as you said,
Yes,
I can as a viewer I can like that something is like not very pretty or that something is
yes,
really
yes,
related to the
absolutely,
struggle. Yeah,
absolutely, and yeah, and of course, if people tell you what they like, they're telling you about them.
yeah,
If someone tells me I like this when you perform, it's not telling me anything about me. It's telling me about what they like. So that's another little thing. You go, oh yeah, okay, that's what you get from it. Great, that's good.
yeah,
But it doesn't mean very often people enjoy things I know I'm not doing. They tell me they enjoy it, and I go, well, I'm not doing that, but I smile and say, oh, thank you, that's lovely. Like it doesn't hurt.
mm,
That's one of my big things about it too. Is um, it 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 may not help, but it won't hurt.
mm.
Whereas negative feedback or more critical feedback or more analytical feedback's too soon. Maybe it will help, but also it can hurt the relationship. Like people then start either defending themselves against that critical view. So when they start to perform, they have to kind of defend, look after themselves instead of just
Mm.
being open and free because they're worried about what other people will think. Or even worse, they start doing what that person told them to do because they want to please them. When in fact, when you're the artist, your job is to do what you want to do. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's often people forget that, that they give way too much power to the feedback of others.
And
It's
that,
just a
yeah,
little reminder. Mm,
yeah. And this also to me very more related to agency, also as a viewer and
yes,
also as a someone who is receiving this. So this is the
yeah,
information I can do something with it. So I can
yes,
do something with it when you tell me about something what really happens. So this is really
yeah,
great
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and and
yeah.
and helpful, especially when you are in improvise.
Yes,
And that,
yes, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So maybe
And
we can,
very often when people improvise,
yeah.
they can't remember what they did.
Mm,
So it's actually great afterwards for someone to say, "I really loved the bit when you did this," and
mm,
then their memory goes, "Oh yes, I remember that." So it's good for that too. It's good for practicing, um, becoming aware of what you're doing because when you're involved in the thing, in the improvising itself, a lot of people they're so present they have no memory.
mm.
They're so kind of lost in that moment that, especially at the beginning, so they can't actually remember anything, and that's not a bad thing. But sooner or later, as an artist, you do want to be able to remember what you're doing. So the conversation is because it's descriptive, it actually helps you to remind you what you did,
Hmm.
in case you've forgotten.
Hmm.
You said maybe I should do something
Yeah.
before I cut you off. So
Yeah.
I will do a little solo, just a few
Yeah.
minutes, and
Yeah.
then I will stop, and then we'll see what happens. The uh, for me, I always think it's great to let the performer speak first,
Mm,
rather than the watcher to tell them about what they did. And the real reason I recommend this to students is to stop you saying something stupid. Like if you're watching someone else and then you tell them what they did just after they did it, sometimes you can say that completely irrelevant and stupid things that so the person realizes, I don't need to listen to you because you've actually got no idea what I'm doing. So it's always good to have that listening thing as the first place. So I'll talk about what I've enjoyed and then you can tell me what you enjoy.
I'll do. I'll do. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
3. 3 is the magic number. 2 is okay, but 3 is the magic number, and 4 is the boring number. So it's delicate, you know. You could go 1, 2, and it would be okay. You could go 1, 2, 3, and it's magic. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, and guess what happens then? Everybody falls asleep. 3. 7 is okay too. 7 is really quite good, but you've got to be young to do 7. I myself just do 3 now. Always 3. Always 3. And I love to avoid symmetry. I love to avoid symmetry. I love to avoid symmetry. Oh, 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 oh. It's horrible, isn't it? It's horrible. That was 6 symmetrical movements. Horrible. Oh, I'm going to stop there. It was nothing.
How is that?
Um, that was good. It like always this demonstration thing is um, one of my least pleasant popular. You know, I really don't like demonstrating. Like if I like to just to perform, so I had to give myself time
Mm,
to get rid of the idea I'm demonstrating something, and that was good. And there were 2 things that kind of kept me interested in the moving, or 2 separate kind of things that were coming and going. One of them was trying to find more detail, like noticing a kind of tendency to have kind of a single movement that kind of flowed. So I was trying to break that up with adding or noticing some detail as where it started or something in the middle or it ended up in a different place. So I was trying to find detail in what I was doing rather than just fall into my habit. And the other pleasure in the moving, oh yes, was taking things beyond the kind of comfortable phrasing. So letting some things go past where I would normally finish them. So if I do this movement, I would that would so this I was going that, and then I would kind of let it extend a bit further to see where it would lead me rather than just again working with my kind of unthinking habit about all of that. Um, so I enjoyed that, those 2 things in the moving. I was really questioning whether I needed to talk. I was having this, there's this beautiful light of the sun setting. I'm in Australia and you're in Poland. And it's been a lovely warm day and you're in the morning and I'm in the evening. And so I get this a lot, this feeling of, oh my God, I'm in Australia. And then I've got this, I don't know if you could hear these birds out there, this beautiful,
Yeah, all the time.
yeah, yeah. And so I started hearing that and that's what brought out the 3 thing.
Mm,
I kind of was responding to the birds, and then I did three responses to the birds, and I was really interested in the kind of timing between me and the bird, and that's produced the three things. So then I just followed the three things, and I also really enjoyed, um, doing that little bit about how horrible symmetry, six symmetrical movements are. I really like that little shift of energy, just in case people thought I was just a sweet guy that works with birds. I just like going with that idea, and then the kind of desperation of the idea producing the other side, of this is horrible feeling. We've talked about what we enjoy and how lovely everything is. So it was great to let myself uh, play with this notion of something horrible. So yeah,
Mm.
that was it.
I really enjoyed the beginning, like nesting, how you call it, less nesting, and then
Yes,
the nesting, and then the sharpness of three, like you
yes, yes,
prepare to give the bird of three, and the sharpness of this moment. I really like it, and I love how you develop the stories,
yeah,
and my favorite was the seven is for young. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, 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 yeah. I just couldn't be bothered doing something 7 times, so I thought, oh, but it's a good number. I've got a rock and roll friend, and he says, like if when he's planning a set, like you never do an even number. Like you do five, or you do seven, or you do nine, but you never do two or four or six. And I'm very affected by this idea that somehow the odd numbers are always better for everything. So yeah, good.
Okay,
And
thank you.
so that's kind of how it goes, isn't it? The positive feedback, and it's like
Yeah.
I take this in me having to describe what I enjoyed. I think that the power of the description is very important, but I do feel it consolidates something. Now, maybe I don't remember that, in
Mm,
the future, or
mm,
maybe I do. It's not like I'm making rules for myself, but now having talked about it, what I've mostly reminded about is what I enjoyed. So therefore,
mm,
I kind of get that attitude of, oh, I can't wait to do the next one to see what I enjoy next time. So it's kind of motivating in that way as well. And it's always wonderful to hear what someone else sees or what they enjoy. And it's also really great to develop your vocabulary to be able to talk about the word. Otherwise,
mm.
people, they end up talking about psychology and all sorts of weird stuff. And it's good when yeah, anyway.
Mm. Thank you.
No, thank you for a great topic.
Can we call it seven is for young or nesting three? What do you prefer?
Yeah, yeah. Seven is for the young, it's called.
Seven is for the young. Okay.
Yeah.